Thank you for staying with us. Time now for us to get into the news review. We're joined by Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, political scientist and head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. Doc, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday morning.
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I'm very well. How about you?
Good.
Great. Any initial thoughts you'd like to share with us on any topic before we get into this bit? So, for example, we have a staff level agreement with the IMF, but of course we know that really doesn't mean much. It only means that we have our foot in the door. Beyond that, though, the mechanisms that must be triggered, the board must approve of this. Of course, the US has hinted that based on the key or crucial role Ghana plays in the sub-region, among others, they would be willing, since they are on the board, to give approval. But there are stages. There are things that must be done from our end. Are we going to be able to do them? When it comes to the debt exchange program, like the minority has pointed out in Parliament, certain documents should have been made available to parliamentarians by now. There's no evidence of that. So while we're looking for this money, the $3 billion, to hit our accounts at the start or in the first quarter of 2023, a lot still remains to be done, without which we cannot proceed on this matter. There's also the bit about the Ghana cedi appreciating against three major currencies that it deals with, or we deal with. I'm talking about the American greenback, the Great British pound, and the European euro. But some of us have also had cause to ask whether all of this is not artificial, like sometimes the Chinese would do. Because even now that the dollar, for example, has fallen to below, almost 11 cedis per the Bank of Ghana, sometimes if you go out there and you try to exchange, you would realize that that is not the figure being used. But some have also mentioned, speaking to Seth Tekba the other day, he made mention of the fact that on the back of the cocoa syndicated loan, on the back of projections of an IMF deal, these will happen. The matter is sustainability. And even at 11, it still is very, very high. Your take maybe on these two matters before we get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, I will touch on the IMF deal and matters arising. If you look at how far we have come, I have said, and I'll repeat it here, it's born out of two things. One, failure of public policy. Two, indiscipline. All right. If you look at all that IMF trying to do for us is to give us resource and then ensure that there's discipline, financial discipline, and all that. So if you look at how far we have come, the issue of indiscipline, if we are disciplined, we will not waste resources in this country. And evidence, there's a whole lot of evidence in the Auditor's General report that we have not managed our resources well. There is always waste. Two is the issue of corruption. Ghana Integrity Initiative has told us that close to $3 billion slipped through our fingers by way of corruption. If you manage that alone, do you think there will be the need to go to even IMF for a bailout? All right, that means that we need to step up our game there. If you look at the way we handle fuel, public office, and then vehicles and all that, there is something that we need to do in terms of prudence to ensure that we get the best results for ourselves. Look at issue of good governance. It requires that government size must always be kept minimal so that you can foot the bill. What we have here, as big as the size of the elephant of this party, a huge one, and that, duty bearers are not prepared, particularly Mr. President is not prepared to listen to any idea about it regarding reducing the size and whatnot. I think we must also look there if you want to. The little money that come to us by way of our revenue mobilization and whatnot, we are shying away. Toll booth system. I am happy that the government has eaten
Well, we have a little connectivity issue to do with Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. Let's just give him a little time to see whether we can kickstart that conversation again. Doc, can you hear me now? Well, we'll try to resolve that glitch and come back to you. In the meantime, the Daily Graphic has these headlines. 80% poultry ventures fold up. That's according to the association. Remember that. 80%. Especially when we're talking about import substitution. And you know just how much we import when it comes to even frozen products, including chicken. And here we go. 80% poultry ventures fold up. What will this mean spilling over into 2023? And what would that mean for producing what we eat? Collapse of Capital Bank Atuesian avoids prison, court okays 90 million Ghana cedi restitution agreement. Of course, there was talking here as well about the value back then and the value now and what he should be paying in reality. And some people have also said, like the judge hinted or intimated before, that this only serves as creating impunity in the system so that people can engage in nefarious activity and, just compromise people's lives. What happens to those who have lost their lives on the back of this? Those who took their own lives because they had lost everything in this. What happens to them? What happens to them? Accountability. So is this sort of setting the tone so that, you can do all of this and once you're able to pay back, you get away with it? Bigger than imagination, different every time. That's something else there, but it's a brand, so I'll not go to that. IMF to inject $3 billion into economy. First milestone achieved for extended credit facility. And Iyoko retrieves 37 suspected stolen luxury vehicles. Story on page 16. Do we have Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante back? All right, so let's get into the stories now. And Ghana has secured a preliminary agreement with the International Monetary Fund for the injection of $3 billion into the economy over the next 3 years. The IMF support and the attendant programs are to help stabilize the economy and correct fiscal and monetary imbalances that have caused the Ghana cedi to depreciate and the prices of goods and services to rise. The staff-level agreement for an extended credit facility was announced yesterday at a press conference jointly addressed by the government side and the IMF mission. Now let's take a quick look at the role of creditors. The announcement of the SLA followed 5 months of negotiations between the government and the IMF over a set of policies and programs needed to restore debt sustainability and general macroeconomic stability for prices and the local currency to stabilize. Now, Ghana's debt was assessed to be unsustainable, prompting efforts by the government to restructure the stock to help qualify for the IMF support. Mr. Oforiatta, yesterday at that presser, urged Labour and the country to rally behind the government in an effort to make the IMF program a success. Rally behind the country, we shall, Mr. Oforiatta, but if some of these policies are inimical to the interests of people, you can expect that, like the TUC is doing, people would rise up and kick against certain aspects of it. Because while we want the general good of the country, no, that's not the mentality. But the point too is we cannot say that we're going to take this hook, line, sinker, wholesale. Just because we are trying to rescue the country, those policies in implementing this, it must not bring to bear undue hardship and suffering on the people. And that is exactly what the TUC is saying in respect of their pension funds. But in other stories, let's take a look at that story about poultry and the impact on our economy. The continuation is on 41. Okay, so let's get to that. Right. The increasing, so 80% of poultry ventures fold up. That's the story. And the increasing importation of cheap frozen chicken for the local market, coupled with the lack of adequate support to the industry in the country, has led to about 80% of poultry farmers' businesses folding up, with the rest struggling to cope. According to an EU data on chicken exports, Ghana has been the leading importer of chicken in Africa for the past 5 years. The leading importer of chicken in Africa, Ghana, for the past 5 years. 227,903 tons imported in 2021. In line with that, the Ghana National Association of Poultry Farmers has made a passionate appeal to the government and other stakeholders to intervene to save the sector from total collapse. The chairman of the association, Victor Opong-Ajay, who made the appeal, said apart from the high cost of inputs, unfair competition from importers of chicken had deprived the country of over 1 million jobs along the value chain. And we also know definitely, for example, we know some of those who are the biggest when it comes to importing chicken into the country. I'll not mention any brand, I'll not mention any person's name, but we all know these people. And there seems to be some sort of hijack of the system, and our local poultry industry is suffering. Doc, welcome back. So I just took that story on 80% of our poultry ventures folding up. In the meantime, guess what? Ghana has been the largest importer of chicken, imported chicken in Africa for the past 5 years. Ghana, small as we are, we're importing more of this than Nigeria, than South Africa, than Libya. Your quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, it ties into what I was saying, that if you look at the issue of indiscipline, this is part of the indiscipline. Why do we have our own poultry here? Our own farmers, developing poultry products for us, and yet we are not ready to patronize them. We rather want to go out and get more. If we are disciplined, we will not engage in that. More so, it is a public policy failure. In public policy, after everything, you examine the policy, whether it's working or not. If it's working, you maintain. If not, you amend it, and then if it is not the best, you throw it out. What has been government policy with regard to what? The issue of what we produce here. Do we consume them? All right. That tells you that we are not serious as a country, and that our policies are knee-jerk policies that don't intend to improve our law. So we'll make all the noise, and yet we do very little. I think that the IMF, they are bringing, as I already said, resource to us and ensure discipline. And then we want to make sure that our policies work. If we are not going to be disciplined, I'm afraid the IMF will make sure that we are disciplined. But my prayer is that when we are done, we get this thing behind us and we move forward. We should take that discipline forward and maintain it so that we don't always go to the IMF at all. We need to stop that practice and make sure that we develop our own, however little, however small that contribution will make. Let's continue. Develop our own poultry, develop our own farmers, develop our businessmen and women so that in times of crisis, we can rely on them and they will support us through thick and thin.
Let's look at the Ato Essien issue. It's on page 16. And the Accra High Court has convicted founder of defunct Capital Bank, William Ato Essien, for stealing 192.5 million Ghana cedis of funds from the bank and ordered him to pay 90 million Ghana cedis to the state. By repaying the amount, which was part of liquidity support to the Bank of Ghana granted to the bank, Essien will not be sentenced to prison terms or a prison term. Already, the state has recovered 101.2 million Ghana cedis out of the 192.5 million, while Essien will pay 90 million Ghana cedis as restitution to the state. Essien pleaded guilty to 16 counts of stealing and money laundering and was accordingly convicted on his own plea by the court presided over by Justice Eric Chebafo. However, the convict avoided a custodial sentence after the court accepted an agreement between him and the prosecution for him, that is Essien, to pay the 90 million Ghana cedis. The story goes on and on. You can grab a copy of the Daily Graphic to get the details. But for me, my stance is clear, Dr. Kwame Asa-Asante. From the times of, if you recall, I've forgotten the name of that case, the situation. Victor Selame, if you remember, one of the longest serving ministers, and what happened to him, and a host of others who sometimes have been mired. Yes, Atuesian may not be a minister of state, and I don't want to be in contempt of what the court has said. But I agree with those who say that if we set these precedents, we are giving life, giving wings to impunity, and for people to engage in some of these activities. How many people have died on the back of these actions? So I make restitution, I pay back the money, and that is it. I don't have anything against this person, but I feel if we go down that road, only God knows. Your quick take on that.
Yes, I think we have listened to the deputy AG. He has thrown, you and I are not lawyers. It's in the best interest of this country. And that it is in tandem with the principle of rule of law, right? So on that score, I believe that I will not have much to say, but wait for the process to finish so that at the end of the day, we can take some lessons from it.
Well, it's practically finished, and he'll have to make those reimbursements to the state. But the point that must be made, Doc, in this instance, and of course I am a student of law, in this instance, what could happen is he could get either one or both. He could get to pay to make restitution and still serve time. So that is it is within the legal framework. It's a choice of where to go. But let's get into other stories. NDC to tighten security at National Congress. Alex Segbefia assures over this weekend that is coming off. But we saw what happened when they elected the national youth organizers and the women's organizers of the party. Dastardly scenes, some people getting shot, and now a list of 16 people to be apprehended on being pursued by the police. What do you make of those, and what are your expectations ahead of this weekend?
I think what we saw last weekend was an ugly spectacle, to say the least. And that you are going for a contest and you see violence. Why? If you are looking for power, you don't use means of violence to get in there. And then what happens if you get power? All right. But I'm happy that the party was able to work cordially with the security people, that Mr. Silvia himself praised the security for a very good performance put up that day. It is my hope and prayer that the party will continue to dialogue with the police and make sure that what they have ahead of them in terms of the next program that is on Saturday will be incident-free. These things are doable if we will plan and plan well. And then we talk to our followers. I want the NDC as a party to send a clear signal that they will not condone violence. They will not support anybody who hide behind the party to come and inflict pain, cause disruption, and all that. Anybody that crosses that line, they should be able to hand him over to the police for the police to do their work. Democracy is a contest. At this level, you are only engaging in a contest, and the contest must be free of violence. So if you are an actor, a candidate for that matter, and you are contesting, all that you do is that you should be able to get your acts together, get your message right, get your resources in place, and get a strategy, and then win the election. If the people are ready to give you a vote, it doesn't matter how violent you are, they will not give you the vote. So once we remember that the choice is made by the electorate, you should be able to be sober and then listen to them and then give them the message that will resonate with them. We want to deal with the problems of Ghana. And this is what I tax politicians to always avert their minds to, that you must have solution for numerous problems. That is what matters. But violence and all that do not rule. It creates problems for us. And then at the end of the day, we are not a better people. I hope and pray that Saturday we will hear no negative story, because what we saw was nothing but an ugly spectacle. All
right. Two quick stories to wrap. Let's prevent conflict. NCCE chairman says so. Now, the chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education, Kathleen Addy, has called for concerted efforts to prevent political and chieftaincy conflicts, which were the main conduits for terrorist attacks. Quoting her, she says, "These terrorists are opportunists, so they look for signs of discord in society and insert themselves into existing disagreements and deepen them. They use that to launch themselves and cause mayhem." She therefore called for intensified sensitization and education, especially in border communities, to avert any incident of terrorism and violent extremism in the country. I want to also highlight this story. Iyoko retrieves 37 suspected stolen luxury vehicles. And Iyoko has retrieved 37 luxury vehicles from some members of the Vehicle and Asset Traders Association. The outfit said the vehicles were part of about 200 of such vehicles believed to have been stolen from Canada and the United States of America. The deputy director in charge of operations at the Economic and Organized Crime Office, Nanentri, said the vehicles being sold to unsuspecting persons were retrieved through a joint action with other security agencies following reports from the Federal Bureau of Investigation of the USA and Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Canada on the activity of some suspected criminals. On Friday, December 9, 2022, Iyoko, in collaboration with the US's Federal Bureau of Investigation and the RCMP, carried out an intelligence-led operation for the retrieval of various specifications of luxury vehicles suspected to have been stolen from the USA and Canada. The story goes on and on. This wouldn't be the first time. I recall seeing, I've forgotten whether it was Nigeria or Ghana. I believe it was Ghana, because there was a luxury vehicle. I don't know whether it was a Ferrari, Lamborghini, Bugatti, one of those. And it had made its way all the way from one of these Western countries into Ghana. And that apparently is becoming a thing. And that is why, for some of us, I mean, I don't have the resources yet to buy some of these vehicles, but when sometimes I go around and I see these garages and the sort of cars they display, sometimes I ask myself, did these people purchase all of these vehicles? Because I hear through Togo and others, it's becoming a trend. What's your quick reaction to these two stories?
Yes, to start with the last one, I mean, kudos to the security people, Yoko, and all the security agencies who made this thing possible. I support them and I'm with them. Sometimes it leaves the ordinary man who wants to buy a car in doubt as to whether he's going to get a good deal, and then that deal will not create problems for him. You buy something and you are, apprehended for having legitimately acquired something that you have no idea its source and all that. So that difficulty, the security people are helping us, is a good one. And I like the global cooperation with regard to the fight against these things. It's a good one, so that whoever is hiding anywhere in the world, don't think that you are on holiday. A day will come that you'll be apprehended and put before court, and that's all. It is important that we do this. Time and again, if you talk to the customs division of DRA, they tell you that if we are so much interested in buying a car, it is important we get to them and then let them also do some checks. I have done that once before. I bought a car and I went to customs, they look at it and said, "This is a good one, you can go." But as to whether everybody will have the time, the patience to do that, we should not be hurried to buy cars and all that. Sometimes we need to do this background check. It is good for ourselves and our country and all that. The issue of NCC urging Ghanaians to stay out of conflicts and then work to help the state to rid it of elements such as terrorists and all that is a good call. And I want NCC to do this more often so that the message will sink down, we will be alert, and then help the security to deal with any challenge that confronts us. Let us remember and that whether we as a civil society or as a society, a civilian society for that matter, supplying information to the security agents, their work becomes so difficult, if not impossible. So it is a dual task that they all who also is charged with the responsibility of maintaining security in this country, but we also must assist them with information, genuine information, not information that will, lead them toward wild goose chase. No, information that will point to something meaningful, so that they can, through that, they can make use of it and then make our society better. Without them, we can't survive. But they also must work and then get our support, so that at the end of the day, the goals that we have in the preamble of the country's constitution, that we live in peace, and in peace with ourselves and with others. other neighbors will be a reality. I'm sorry.
All right, so I'm just taking a quick look at the story, still in the Daily Graphic, and then we'll blaze through the other papers. World record nonuplets return home to Mali. That is 9 babies born at the same time. They have safely returned home to Mali after spending the first 19 months of their lives in Morocco. The babies broke the Guinness World Record for the most children delivered in a single birth to survive. And you can check out details from the Daily Graphic. But I'd like you to quickly react to these stories as we proceed. The first one from the Daily Guide newspaper on page 3. Bagbin becoming a tyrant. That's according to the Minority Chief Whip, Mohamed Mubarak Muntaka, who has deployed an epithet against the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, calling him a dictator. According to him, the Speaker is gradually turning the parliamentary chamber into a palace by increasingly becoming intolerant to disagreement. Quoting him, he says, "I'm sorry to say this, when you want to turn the chamber of parliament into a palace, then you become a tyrant. He is becoming a tyrant. You are not a chief. You are supposed to be the Speaker of Parliament, and a Speaker listens to both sides patiently, even when there is a disagreement. And that is the essence of democracy, to sometimes even agree to disagree." And he mentioned this right here on Joy News. There's also Bukom Banku and son remanded. Why? Let me bring you some details of that. Brima Isaac Kamoko, aka Bukom Banku, a Ghanaian professional boxer, has been remanded into police custody by an Accra Circuit Court for 1 week on the charge of abetment of crime. He is said to have abetted one Prosper Quay to cause harm to one Ishmael Quay at Bukom in the Greater Accra region. Bukom Banku was in the dock with one Mustafa Kamoko, his son, who was also facing the charge of causing damage. Then finally, there is also Mosquito vindicates EC, and I'm talking about Johnson Esiru Kesie, a national chairman aspirant of the opposition NDC, who has given the strongest evidence ever that the party actually lost the 2020 general elections. In his view, the decision to go to court by former President John Mahama was baseless, and that it was just to cause disaffection between Jean Mensah, the chairperson of the EC, and the general public. And this is supposed to have come from some leaked tape. And that story is captured by the Ghanaian publisher. Your take on these 3 matters, whichever ones you choose.
Yeah, I'll start with Bagbin's story. All right, that the Honorable MP Mubarak is saying that. On what basis is he saying this? Because we are also watchers of the parliamentary programs, and for me, I have not seen anything of that sort. I haven't seen that. He is there every day, so maybe he's seen something that we are not privy to. But when we look at the Speaker, I don't think he has that posture. All right. More often than not, that I have seen him, he throws the issues to the chamber. Discussion is held and all that. So I think that the Honorable MP's comments, he's taken it too far. I'm not sure that anybody can be a dictator in this country. You may have the tendency, but if we are mindful of the rules of the game, I can assure you, nobody can be a dictator. We have said that the president, or every president in this country, by the architecture of this country's constitution, has numerous powers and all that, and sometimes too much powers. That I disagree with that position, even at that national level, because for every power, that is a corresponding limitation on its powers. All right, through laws, through standing orders, and what above all, there is also the popular sovereignty. We, the people who put them there, we have powers. I mean, we have powers that go to limit also what is given to them by the laws of this country. So I don't think that the Speaker is becoming a dictator. No, that one I disagree with respect. I don't think so. If the Honorable MP feels so strongly about it, and then he knows what to do, why can't you also take some of the actions to court? That this is the law, and you are going against it. Then you can issue what, a writ that will bring the Speaker down in terms of going beyond his powers and all that. But for what he's saying, I'm sorry to agree with him. If we look at the Siedum Ketier's issue, the tape and all that, I don't know how authentic is that tape. So I believe that at this level, we can treat it as one of the rumor. If there is the need to go into it in detail, then I think it's more of forensic audit, and that will reveal whether it is a truism or not. But at the moment, I believe that it must be discounted. We move on until it is proven otherwise.
All right, we move, huh? Well, let's wrap with these two papers. The Chronicle, Ghana was honest with us, says IMF, after reaching staff-level deal with Oforiatta and team. I like how some of our newspapers couch certain things depending on what the outlook is, but I'll reserve my comments on this. There's also Atuesian escapes custodial sentence, and infighting rules NDC. Our win chief's petition interior minister. And finally, the Custodian newspaper, we're fighting corruption. That's according to Vice President Bawumia. Again, I have my own take on this, and the metrics themselves from the Afrobarometer and others will show whether, in fact, we're making any gains against corruption. And when you look at public sentiment, and I believe the last one that was conducted by the Ghana Statistical Service, I think, and the United Nations, obviously point to the fact that even in reality, we are not making gains against corruption. But that's the story. We're fighting corruption. The Vice President says so. Atuesian's story is also here. And dogfight in NDC, as Yudun Ketia, supposedly drops 2020 election secrets. Final words for us?
Yes, I'll look at corruption. And it is one of the critical indices for ensuring effective governance. All right. As to whether we are winning the fight or not, what the papers are saying, I disagree vehemently. The records are there for everybody to see. Ghana Integrity Initiative has told us that every year we lose close to $3 billion to corruption. Are you winning such a fight? If you had that opportunity, would you go to IMF and ask for same there? I'm not sure we are winning. What is more is the records that are captured within the Transparency International that put this country from 13 up to today, that yes, we are doing something little. We are not winning the fight. If you take, for instance, 2021, the Corruption Perception Index on the Transparency International website is 43%. And then the closer you are to zero, the more corrupt you are. And so 43, you are closer to zero. Denmark and co, they are up there as leaders, clean. The closer you are to 100, you are more clean. So I think that it is fair to say that this government has done a lot to lessen the situation. But unfortunately, corruption is still rife here. So I believe that the way forward is to walk the talk. There's more talk shop in the fight against corruption than the real action. Let our leaders be serious. Let us know that this is the canker that is sending us to what is part of the variables that are pushing us to the IMF. Right. And that the earlier we nip it in the bud, the better it will be for us. And we should also remember that it is one of the factors that influence voter choices. Right. In fact, if you rank them, it is the third important variable for a voter to decide as to who should govern him. So we as a society, we as political party actors, we should be able to look at these things and deal with it head on and stop the lip service.
Thank you, Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, for joining us. You always make this so beautiful. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday morning, and have the best of the day.
I wish you a good day.
I wish you the same. And that is Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, political scientist and head of the Center for European Studies. Lionel Messi messed up Croatia yesterday, and they thrashed the Croatians, the Europeans, by 3-0, 3 unanswered goals. But my prediction is that Messi will make it to the finals, but Argentina will lose. And that's my prediction. I'm entitled to it. There's more coming your way in sports as we also contemplate the other semi-final clash today, France versus Morocco. Stay with us.